Welcome to the Bhakti Zone podcast, your place to discuss everything Bhakti. We're your hosts, Vish and Dayal. And today we're very excited to discuss, is Bhakti religion? Is Bhakti spirituality? Or is Bhakti a lifestyle? Let's explore.
That's actually a very interesting question, right? Because a lot of people hear about Bhakti a lot, right? We have Bhakti Fest. A lot of people in yoga scene speak about Bhakti, but many of them have certain idea what Bhakti is. And I know most probably you have experience. It's not exactly same what one people think Bhakti is and that what other people think Bhakti is. And I think we both are been in Bhakti tradition. I mean, you've been there your whole life. I've been more than 20 years now. And I think it's a very fair discussion. I think maybe also educational and maybe also good for us to kind of systematize what Bhakti is, also for internal inventory, as well as have something to maybe explain to people when they ask us. So is it religion, is it lifestyle, is it spirituality? I think it's definitely all three. And for those who go and practice Bhakti full time, like both of us do, it's definitely all three. Now, what is the most important aspect of it? For me personally, it's definitely faith, philosophical support over a monotheistic view. As much as let's say Christianity or Muslim religion, it's a monotheistic religion in a way. In its core, if you go deep in its core, it is understanding that there's God, I'm a servant of God, and God loves me, and my goal is to learn to love Him and learn to love others as His children, and learn to serve others because they are connected to God and to please Him. So basically, in its core, in its root, Bhakti is developing divine love. In Bhakti, we say that the goal is Prema Bhakti, or the love of God. Unmotivated, unconditional, pure love based on service. You just want to please somebody and you don't want anything back. So much as actually that's what God, again, we will go and speak about it, but because some people say, I don't accept God, I don't believe in God, even those who believe in God, in Bhakti. But yes, as He loves us unconditionally and takes care of us unconditionally, and we take things for granted, and very often we think that we deserve it, and if we don't get something, we just demand it, and we feel entitled and pissed that we don't get what we entitled to. So this is all things which actually contrary to what Bhakti stands for. So I would say let's maybe start with this, if you're comfortable with, just to look at this aspect, and then maybe expand it.
There was a phrase that you said in there, learning to love. And Bhakti is, when we're practicing Bhakti, we're opening ourselves up to learning how to love. We've forgotten how to love, because of past experiences, of heartbreaks, of people hurting us, of relationships being full of challenges and obstacles and clashing, that we feel like we don't. I would rather just meditate, or rather just be in a peaceful state, or be in some type of nirvana, some type of equilibrium state. But Bhakti, like I was reading something very interesting the other day where liberation is kind of, I was reading it in Dharma, the book that you gave me by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he's saying how liberation is kind of a temporary state because liberation just means you've surpassed the mundane. But then what after that, right? So bhakti is what comes after that. Bhakti is what comes once, and of course I'm not liberated, but I'm practicing bhakti because I'm learning how to love. I'm learning to prepare myself for that time when I can fully open myself. And as you said, there's practical aspects around that, right? So so we're learning to love, but how do we learn to love? There are certain guidelines. There are certain things that facilitate our bhakti to grow. There are certain things that may squash our bhakti, that may trample our bhakti. And so in that sense, there becomes maybe some rules and regulations around bhakti, which I would say can be seen as religious, right? Where there's a religious path. There are certain things that you do and certain practices that we do that enhance our feeling of learning to love. And there are certain practices that we avoid because they hinder our ability to learn to love. So in that sense, I would say that there's a religious path because, in my experience, well, first of all, the word religion means to relink, to relink, which is what yoga means, right? Yoga means to link, and religion means to relink. So it's such people are a little averse to that word these days, especially in many scenes that I've experienced. People are averse to the word religion, but when I use the word, it's in the sense of an institution that allows me to grow, allows me to express myself, allows me to be myself, allows me to associate with like-minded people and find like-minded people. I mean, our Guru Prabhupada would often say, I created the Hare Krishna movement particularly to create a community, to create places where you can be together. So that's, in that sense, I would say that there are certain things that are favorable and there are certain things that are unfavorable. And a religion or a religious setting allows us to be well situated within that.
So, as you said, Vish, that religion is something which people feel kind of uneasy about. I think it's a beautiful way to say that religion means to relink. I want to address why a lot of people, at least what I've experienced, people don't like organized religion. They don't like the misuse of organized religion to manipulate people into doing something which is not actually meant to awaken one's love. There's a lot of, that's true and absolutely correct. There's a lot of evil has been done in the name of religion, but even has been done in the name of money, sex, power, you name it. People who want to do evil, they will use anything. And, classical example, you have a knife, right? So you can cut with a knife, you can cut your bananas, oranges, and apples, or you can cut somebody's throat. What to say in America, it extends into guns, right? It's not everywhere. And people can have different opinion on this. We'll maybe speak about it at some other time. When we speak about bhakti and politics. But this is not the topic today. So this is something which actually you don't have to be dependent on institution, but you definitely have to have some authority whom you trust. Have somebody whom you trust. In our tradition, it's guru. Guru who we accept. Nobody forces us. We see somebody who is inspiring us, who embodies the symptoms of a saintly person, the symptoms, role model ultimately, a role model. And in this sense, practically, again, in every aspect of life, there is a guru. But this Bhakti gurus, they teach something which is not taught anywhere in this planet, and something which transcendental, the manual of getting out. And as you said, it's beyond liberation. It's a temporary position, because we are not meant to be inactive. So Bhakti is also very rich philosophy, and it explains that liberated position, you have eternity and you have knowledge. You don't have any bliss. You don't have any. Soul is pleasure seeking by nature, and soul is interactive by nature. All the pleasure comes through the relationship. And when there's no relationship, when you part of, it's possible to be one with something, but then you lose your individuality. You are not identifying yourself, and basically this is called a spiritual suicide. But a lot of people don't think so far ahead, because it's like, what happened to you when you die? Well, I don't know. I haven't died yet in this life, right? So, very rarely somebody comes back. Very rarely. Those who claim that they come back, you better question them, So this is not the thing that somebody say, okay, guys, I was on the other side, So that's what's going on. Even somebody comes and says this, nobody will believe. So there's a certain realm which requires trust and requires faith, and you cannot verify it. But the only thing I feel we can verify it by the qualities in a person. That person is kind, person is compassionate, person is generous and loving and humble, and all the good qualities you can think about. So if somebody develops these qualities and don't have mundane desires, he's not after wealth, he's not after power. And when I say he, I also mean she, So let's understand that this is equally open to men and to women, and we will not touch any other genders. We will not touch everyone in between. Yes. It's to any human being. It is open to any human being. Absolutely. So that's why I feel that definitely there is the reason why people don't, afraid of religion.
That's another topic, Bhakti and gender.
Yes. So that will be a surprising one. But yeah, so there's a reason why people don't like the word religion. But if you go deeper in it and understand what's behind it, there's all things which we don't like behind religion. Religious people or people who are sincerely practicing, they also don't like it. So it's a mutual. And another thing, you don't need to hang out with millions of people. So, you need a tight community, like a brotherhood or sisterhood, whatever, people who are like-minded. It's also one thing which is taught in Bhakti. You respect everybody, you respect their spiritual practice, but you stay together with people with whom you share who are like-minded. It means on every aspect you feel connection, spiritually, but also human connection and inspiration. And it's okay that you don't need to be friend, or close friend with everybody. It's natural. I feel, for example, uncomfortable in big crowds of people, but I don't have to be there in order to practice Bhakti. But I can be there for some time when I feel like, but it's not prerequisite to be there. Anyway, so I kind of got somewhere.
It sounds to me like one of the things I'm getting out of what you're saying is Bhakti is very personal.
Yeah,
it's a very personal practice. There's a very personal approach to the practices of Bhakti. And because we are each individuals, we approach this path, this Bhakti path, according to where we're at, our nature, our inclinations, our maybe our karma or our background, where we come from, our psychology, you know, uh, and so in that sense, it's a spirituality, right? Because if each one of us has our own approach to this practice, in a very individual, a very personalized way of but it takes some maturity to get to that place, right? It takes some maturity
Right.
in the practices to find, okay, this is how I do my morning sadhana. This is my daily sadhana, which is my personal thing. Your way of doing it might be slightly different, although we chant the same mantra, and we chant around the same amount of time, and we do the same sort of meditation, but your approach to it, your meditation in it, is very internal and very personal for you. Mine is very personal for me. So and everyone, and every single, I would say even beyond humans, every single living entity has a personal relationship with the divine, with God, with who we call Krishna. Um, and and so each and every being has that. And so in that sense, it's for everyone. Like bhakti is already in the kind of lying dormant. That love is lying dormant within each and every being's heart. And so as human beings, we have this obviously wonderful opportunity to create then community, to create, a framework that allows that love to be expressed and shared. And so it's very personal. And I think that personal side of it comes through maturity and through a very mature understanding. Meanwhile, there is the kind of framework that is created, and that framework is specifically, I mean, it's for everyone, but it's specifically for those that are just coming to the practice, right? Like I would say that, I think both you and I would agree that, if we were to identify what our religion is, we would say, well, we practice bhakti,
Right.
right? But at the same time, yours way of expressing it and my way of expressing it, it's so different, so personal. And when we do come together, there are certain aspects that we love to share. Like we like to share the music together. We love to share the philosophy or the discussion. That's why we started this podcast, to be able to share in the discussion with each other. So it's almost like this progression where, it's not necessary for, I think, someone to say, I am this or I am not this or something, if they don't feel comfortable with it. And at the same time, it's a helpful framework.
And I think it's also something which you accept ultimately from within, and it has to be voluntary. We just, before we started filming today, you was telling about some friends who grew up in Bhakti, who are agnostic. And I just want you to, to relate to, I mean, explain, maybe expand a little bit on it. For example, I know that I was agnostic before I came to Bhakti. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in any religion. I was, at some point, I was open to any religion or to any knowledge. I was reading, whatever, Osho, Carlos Castaneda, and, all kind of, then transcendental meditation, whatever was kind of connected with getting above of the world where I was living, something more divine, something more explorative of my internal potential. God was not even in a picture in this. I just wanted to see what other potential I have. And definitely one trap is that you start to believe that I am actually God, and I was in this trap, not without the help.
God was trapped?
No. Yeah, God was not without the help of LSD and stuff like that, So that kind of, you feel that you manipulate the reality and you put yourself in this trap. Obviously, it's laughable right now, but yeah, that but then I was reading all these books and they were all very interesting, like extremely interesting. But I was kind of, but which one? Like it all made sense. Zen Buddhism, I read, wow, amazing. Then I read Castaneda, oh, no, I need to go eat cactuses, Then I read Osho, another thing, Then I don't even remember what, then I was doing transcendental meditation, far out, It wasn't until I get a book of Prabhupada, and I was kind of I was very arrogant. I thought I know too much already. I met some of Hare Krishna guys on the street, and he was kind of giving me a book. And I was in the mood, okay, I will be benevolent, I give him money, but I really don't need a book, I said, just take it. And so I said, okay, fine, just, And then he started actually, I said, I do transcendental meditation. So he started trying to preach to me. And I almost returned his book. But I was smart. I said, listen, don't talk, I will read, So I understand some people who are not ready to listen, doesn't matter what you tell to them. And it's okay. You need to speak to people, and when people are ready to hear something, they will hear something. And the book, when I read it, it was, okay, that is what I was looking for, 100%. And there's God, love of God is a goal of life. I guess it was like a very esoteric book called Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And I tell you, I didn't understand maybe 95% of what it said. It was just like way above my head. But I got the essence of what was stated there without all the intricate details around it. And it was enough. I felt like I found what I was looking for. So that was a moment of commitment. And since that, by Lord's grace, I never felt doubt in this. But anybody can be tested in their faith. I have been tested, definitely, but not to the extent where I had doubt in my belief. But it's opposite. So that was voluntarily, but it's different to somebody who just grown, like, we have kids right now, so they born in Bhakti, and some of your friends, they were born, which you were talking about, they were born in Bhakti, and it was assumed they already believe in whatever their parents believe in, and they most probably didn't voluntarily have this moment where they just discovered it, accepted it, and made a full commitment. So I just wanted to how that worked with them and what you feel the reason is.
Well, I can really empathize with people, whether it's people that grew up in Bhakti or people that have come to Bhakti but might not be ready to, because of their past experiences and past hurts and whatever, they might not be ready to kind of accept a personal God or a personal aspect to divine. I can empathize, and the reason I can empathize with them is because although I have faith, to the degree that my faith is firm, and to the degree that my faith is fixed, and to the degree that I really experience and really believe that that Krishna exists, that God exists, that I can love that God, that personality loves me. That is my, as we said, learning to love, right? That is my learning process. That is what I practice bhakti for. Like, I'm not at that place, right? I do the practices. I listen to people. I associate with like-minded people who feel the same way. But I feel like my whole practice of bhakti is simply to come closer and closer to realizing that sweetest personality who we call Krishna, but who every tradition calls by their own name, that every that manifests in unlimited ways, in unlimited colors, in unlimited forms, in unlimited, experiences and moods, for each one of us to develop that love and start to create that connection more and more.
That's actually a very interesting aspect we can touch on after. But I just wanted to.
So that for me is like what bhakti is, and so I've done a lot of kirtan. I've gone to a lot of places outside of religious settings, outside of kind of the kind of spiritual community settings, and gone outside to other communities, other spiritual communities, or just communities in general, not even spiritual, music festivals, whatever, and share kirtan there. And what I start to see is that people are attracted to, in a sense, the lifestyle of it, right? The music of it, the kind of the beads, right? As you said, the fashion maybe to some degree, or in a way that the diet, as you said, the philosophies behind it, right? I think that there's also a gradual progression that can be bhakti as a lifestyle, right? Where someone comes to it from that aspect, and they might not even have like this firm faith in God, or even understand, as Prabhupada would say, you don't have to understand what the mantra even means. Now, at some point, it's good to start to explore what the mantra means and what that mantra means to me. But that lifestyle aspect of bhakti is such a sweet way, I feel, for people to get a gradual entrance into bhakti. And then, is it always necessary to, once again, is it necessary to then keep the external kind of lifestyle of like, I don't have a shaved head, and I've been asked here a few times, why don't you shave your head? And I'm just like, well, there's aspects to bhakti that I grew up in it. I grew up in it, and I had a shaved head for a long time, and maybe I'll do it again, but now I don't feel like doing it. But I'm still doing the practices internally. So I feel like, there's this sweet entrance for people that don't understand the philosophy, don't really understand maybe the meaning behind the words or the Sanskrit, maybe aren't even ready to accept a personal being as God, but there's something in their heart that's pulling them in. There's some sweetness that they're feeling, and in that sense, because bhakti is at the core of it, it's an emotion. It's a feel. It's our deepest emotion. It's our deepest self. And as our podcast is going to talk about, and how everything just kind of centers around bhakti. How you start to create your life, create your beliefs, create your families, create your systems, create your institutions, your businesses, whatever, all based around bhakti. So,
without actually making it extra endeavor, it's just something I just wanted to say. It's just something that you cannot even think of doing it in a different way. You want it to be something which supports your system, because bhakti, if you practice it the way we do, like a full time and being on this, is just okay. We come and we live in Mayapur, India, and it's hot here, most of the time, and it's a lot of inconveniences. Though I could not say there's a lot of conveniences lately, but before devotees would come and live here, not because it's the most convenient place in the world, but because it is conducive for their bhakti. So it's kind of something that you're, build your business around, build your life, your family around in a very, very conscious way. I have seen a lot of people doing it. So I just wanted to kind of comment.
Absolutely. We're learning to love. We're learning to love. We've forgotten how to love. We've been burnt out. we are mistrustful. We're mistrustful, and so we tend to want to kind of not open up to that. But bhakti is a sweet way to open up to that eternal love that is lying inside of us, that eternal connection with the divine consciousness, our tiny little spark of consciousness connecting with divine consciousness. And through that connection with divine consciousness, our connection to everything, the world, nature, other beings, begins to start making sense more. It starts making sense. And it's really a beautiful path for everyone. And I feel like there is an entry point for everyone, whether it is as a lifestyle, whether it is as a spirituality or philosophy. That is what, like, sounds like that's what attracted you, was like the philosophy behind it. Okay, you were already searching for a path, and it was the philosophy that drew you in. And then there are others that like to belonging, a sense of belonging. Okay, I want to belong to this religion because it gives me a sense of belonging, and I like the community, and I like the, chanting together, or the temple, or whatever it is. Like, that's the religious side of it. So there's an entry point for everyone to this path. And I personally feel that there is bhakti within every tradition.
Absolutely.
That there is a underground stream of bhakti, that if you go beyond the surface of the Vatican Christian Church, or the Orthodox Christian Church, or, whatever, the, Mecca of Islam, or the TOVP of Mayapur, if you go kind of beyond the surface of the buildings, and then the organization and the externals of all of the traditions, underneath it, and sometimes it's more esoteric, and sometimes it's you have to kind of, it's a little hidden and not as easily accessible because it's very personal. But within Islam, there's the Sufi tradition, which at the root of it is a very bhakti-based movement. Or within Judaism, there's the Kabbalah, which is also a very bhakti-based movement. There's in Christianity, there's love for Jesus, or the brides of Jesus, or gospel music, which is this ecstatic music set. So I feel like within every tradition, underneath it, and at the heart of it, at the core of it, is what we call bhakti, devotion, loving God, loving each and every being, finding the compassion for each and every being, because we're all brothers and sisters, all children of the same one, of the same source. It starts to be divided when we put a name on it, right? When we start to say this one or that one or that one, it starts to feel somewhat divided, and that has its place too, because but it's within every tradition. And I think that our practice as bhakti practitioners is to keep digging deeper and deeper, find that one spring, that one source that feeds so many sources.
Right. And to be honest, what I see, it's not even deep within tradition. I think it's the very definition of it. If you just say, is your religion teaches to know God and to love Him, right? This is basically what Prabhupada, our Acharya, founder of ISKCON, he said that the simplest definition is to know God and to love Him, and to serve Him. That's all. So which religion would disagree with this? So there's so many different aspects of life which you can choose, and even different religions that you can choose, and still the core is, I want to know God and I want to love Him. I want to learn to love Him, which is the core of it, I guess.
I feel really fortunate that I grew up in a family that, for one thing, practices bhakti. And I grew up with that. At the same time, both my mother and father basically practice bhakti completely opposite of each other. Yes. So my father, he's Indian. He likes the structure. He's up at 3:30 every morning. He likes to chant his japa. He can read, he likes to do his japa meditation. He can read for hours and hours a day. And just that kind of, that structure for him, and maybe the austerity of it and the intensity of it is how he approaches his bhakti path. And my mother, who I would say is no less of a bhakti yogini, of a practitioner of bhakti, but she's more relaxed in her way. She just wants to come to if she's going to come to the kirtan, she's going to dance harder than any of the young girls in the kirtan. She has obviously done her philosophical study as a young woman under Srila Prabhupada, but she just wants to live it more and practically apply it, as opposed to continue to study it or analyze it and like that. So I feel, and one thing that she did for us, my father kind of created this like a structure: learn the music, learn the tunes, learn Mridanga, learn the Sanskrit, learn the verses, the songs, whatever. He kind of put me on that track. And I feel like my mother, she put me on this track where it was just fun. It was just exciting. It was exciting to put on tilak. It was exciting to get ready to go to the temple. It was exciting to, dance and do dramas and do spiritual art, bhakti art. So those two tracks, I feel like the two of them don't always see eye to eye with each other, and they've been married for 45 years or something, but somehow they make it work, but I feel like those two tracks for me have been what have guided me. One is somewhat of a structure, and one is just that heart. Srila Prabhupada would say, chant Hare Krishna and be happy, right? So my mother, she says, you're chanting Hare Krishna and you're being miserable, So she says, you chant Hare Krishna and I'll be happy, Not that she doesn't chant. She chants too, but she's like, I'll be happy. You do the structural part.
Actually interesting, I just watched today some interview of Dennis Prager. He's kind of famous in conservative circles, and he's a religious person, and he also has written books about happiness, and so he was a big advocate of happiness. And he was saying that if you're a religious person, you either be happy, or if you're miserable, maybe you should start practicing religion, because you're a bad advertisement for us. Because actually, if you properly practice spiritual path, you will be happy. And it's a certain responsibility to be happy. He said you have a responsibility of being happy. Don't be miserable. And I just, another interview I shared with you, remember Shia LaBeouf? And he was sharing how he was driving with his monks, and they were laughing all the time without reason. Just, he said, what's going on, guys? Well, I said, they're just happy. Mm-hmm. So yes, people who are truly spiritual, they have this joy. And if you're not joyful, means there's still way to go. But definitely don't advertise spiritual path as something like super severe and super miserable, because that's not the way to practice it. It cannot be. It's not meant to be. So yes, if you have, even non-spiritual people should try to be happy. Of course, another thing which he shared today, it was kind of nice phrase. If it's not horrific, it's fantastic. Something like that. Means like if your life is not really like, if you're not at war, which you can say, okay, try to be happy, but somebody killing your family, or somebody is raping somebody, like serious stuff. Mm-hmm. We're not saying just be, happy about it. No, But most people are miserable out of nothing. For no reason, they just find drama. They have food to eat, they have shelter, they have, decent life, by material standards. And there's much more people, if you come to India, people live in much more austere condition. We just went to see a sample, right, in this hut.
Mm-hmm.
No electricity, extremely hot. But some Indian people live in the worst conditions. They have a tin hut, and you see they smiling. So we don't have a moral right to not be in a horrific condition, it's war, or, somebody is robbing or killing us. There are circumstances where we could say, yeah, it's tough, but we don't even go there. There's a lot of ways how people choose to become miserable, where there's actually no reason to be miserable. So I think that's where we can safely say it applies, right? As a person who practice spirituality, we should understand, if I feel miserable, I'm doing something wrong. And I need to recalibrate my practice. I need to recalibrate my approach to life, and I can choose to be happy. Again, if we're not in a horrific situation. Whereas there's another example. Anyway, we can speak maybe about this more depth. I just wanted to say when you were talking about fun. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sometimes there's extreme situations, right? Or sometimes we put ourselves in extreme situations, right? And then there's the other side to it, where we're being too relaxed or too complacent or too zoning out and not in the bhakti zone, and it reminds me of a story of the Buddha when he was meditating by a river, and when he first entered into the path, he went very extreme with his practices, because he was basically practicing like a Jain type of yoga, which was fasting and not sleeping and full-on meditation and breath work and all these things. And so there's images where you see the Buddha where he's completely just bones. He's just skin and bones, because he had gone to one extreme of the practice. And he heard a boatman. There was a boatman going down the river, and the boatmen in India, they hear music coming from the water. They hear music coming from the river, and it inspires their song, and it inspires their music. So the boatman was going, and he had a string, and he was tuning his string instrument. And he was saying, if I tighten the string too much, then the string will snap. And if I loosen the string too much, then there won't be a good sound.
Saying to himself.
He was saying it to himself. And so he was tuning it. And the Buddha heard this, and he thought, okay, one extreme is this life of austerity and penance and rigorous sadhana, which I think you can speak to at some point, is like that rigorous sadhana that you put yourself through, like this fire of hours and hours of strict, of discipline. But that can sometimes break the string, right? And at the same time, on the other side, where maybe I can speak to, having grown up in bhakti and being like, yeah, it's there, it's all good, I'll show up when I feel like it, and I'll show up in whatever frame of mind and whatever consciousness, it doesn't really matter, and it's all good, and that kind of like more, I'm going to show up to check out the girls, whatever, like that more very loose, it's like the string is too loose, and then you won't get the right sound. So there's a balance that through maybe guidance from our teachers, through guidance from each other, and finding that right community that allows us to resonate in the right frequency, in the right vibration that each one of us has. And when we find that, I feel like when we find that, then we all like find that resonance together, that harmony together. And that's the beautiful offering that each one of us has to give.
Yeah. I feel that, this topic is bottomless. We just can go on and churn it. but I feel let's maybe put a stop for it now and maybe come back to it. So what we concluded is Bhakti religion, lifestyle, spirituality. I think we figured out it's everything and more, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things which could be discussed. I feel like discussing, where I'm just thinking that there's so much people can digest,
Me too. I have a lot to digest.
Exactly. You and me, we have a lot to digest. So,
Yeah.
so let's.
My advice and my personal meditation for myself would be to explore each of these aspects, each of these kind of entrances or gateways into bhakti, and what resonates with me. What is resonating with me? And my teachers have told me that if something resonates, if there's some teaching or some verse or some song or some aspect of, Krishna or divinity that resonates with you, keep that preciously within your heart. And some other things that don't necessarily make sense, it's okay. Don't focus on the things that don't make sense, but focus on those things that are beginning to make sense, that are, as we started out, the most important rule of bhakti, from what I've heard, is that we accept those things that nourish our devotion and our love, and we reject those things that are not working for our love. And sometimes we have to do that even within a community, even within a society, even within maybe something we can explore later, but even within teachings that may not resonate with me at this point where I'm at. And so I find those things that resonate, hold on to those, keep those precious within my heart, and let that water my devotional creeper.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Okay, Vish, thanks for this discussion, and let's see what we'll discuss next week.
Thank you, Dayal.
Okay.
Thank you for the Bhakti Zone listeners. We look forward to sharing more with you.